Are you ready to have your eyes melt out of your eye sockets with some crazy Sakuga animation? Because that's what we're gonna look at right now. This guy is pretty intense. I'm just gonna warn you now. This has been heavily requested. He's done a lot of work at Toei Animation for One Piece. Yeah, he's a very popular animator right now. Definitely has that crazy, bombastic, high levels of layered effects, like what we would see with Yutaka Nakamura. I've got a few scenes prepared here which we can break down frame by frame. Some shots that he's animated that I think are quite indicative of some of his hallmark styles. Certain shot choices he either chooses to do or is selected to do by his director. And this does happen in the animation industry. You know, people are kind of typecasted for certain shots. And what I found was, while he does have these go-to shots, he also has a lot of these pieces of animation in his reel. They actually show that he's not a one-trick pony. He wants to do a lot of different types of shots, not just the wacky Sakuga stuff, but also character animation and effects animation and other things in between. So I think he's an interesting, very versatile and very prolific animator to have a look at. So let's start with this shot. I found the Genga for this, so this is unrendered version. Later on, we're gonna see the unrendered version of this next to the artworked version, so we can see what was potentially changed in the artworking section when he handed this Genga off to the artworking department. This shot reveals something about Vincent Chansard, I think. So I'll play this shot for you, this little piece of animation. So it's an impact, you know, it's an explosion, and like many explosions in Toei Animation in One Piece, they have kind of phases to this explosion. So this isn't even the full explosion. This is a close-up of what's happening on the surface of this impact onto the dragon. I'm gonna request, and I know this is difficult. It's difficult for me as well as for you, but I'm gonna ask you to try and look past the flashiness. Look past the crazy electric sparks that are happening, this stuff that's going on, and we'll just have a look at the background. He's kind of outlined this background. It's very vascular with all these kind of veins and roots and things going on. We got a lot of erratic movement going on with the electric sparks. And you can actually see that these are hand brushed, and he has this kind of globular quality to these electric lines that I've noticed. We have this very intensely contoured inside and outside to this ring that's happening. We can just see that emanate outwards. It's like, I don't know if it's steam or water or what. We'll find out in the artworking stage, I guess. But we've also got these particles moving past, and have a look at the motion path of these particles. It suggests something. I'll actually track this. Let's track this, okay? So far it's linear, or is it? It's not. Look at that. It's not linear. It's actually a curved motion path. You see, I just tracked it there to show you the path that it takes. And actually all of these particles in the foreground are conforming to this, and you'll find out why in a second. This one takes a slightly different path, and that kind of implies depth. Interesting. Now, this becomes clear later when we're looking at this background. Have a look at this background. Now, if you're a lazy animator or an animator who just doesn't have the time or the patience or the willpower to put in, you would just have this background as a single drawn frame, and you would draw it once. You would have all of this crazy erratic impacts in the center of the frame where people are looking, and you would just move outwards. You just zoom back. You'd use a zoom. But Vincent doesn't do that. And this is kind of what sets him apart. When you get to about here, so this is frame 13, at this point, you will see something happen to the background. Look at that. He might have even redrawn this detail. It looks like he possibly did. Yes, he did. He redrew this entire background, all of these little lines, this vascular detail. He collapses this side a little bit. And the effect of that is it looks like the camera is kind of swinging around. Very interesting, right? He's worked in a little bit of subtle camera movement into this effects animation shot. Hand-drawn, swinging camera movement. And I think for one thing, this shows some of his personality here. He's someone who wants to go above and beyond. He's willing to redraw a detailed background, even if it takes him a lot of time, to get an exact three-dimensional camera pull away that feels quite natural, I suppose. And it does add something to the scene. This kind of swinging camera movement, it does add something that you wouldn't get with a typical zoom out. And you can actually start to see on that last frame and on the electric currents that are coming out, that the currents themselves start to favor this side. And that makes sense in a three-dimensional view, right? Like, because the camera is now looking a bit more like to the right. And so this is coming out this way instead of just all over the place. Makes sense. So he understands the scene on a three-dimensional axis, these subtle but well-defined camera angles and movements. Okay, I knew you wanted to see the impacts. Everyone always loves impact frames, so let's have a look at them. So we've got a little ring here. He's differentiated the different parts of the impact frame. So you've got the ring, you've got obviously the point which everything's emanating outwards. You've got these little sparks coming out through the ring. I've seen this kind of stuff before, but it's always fun to have a look and open up the bonnet on one of these pieces of Sakuga animation. And then you've got bright flash, and then you have this. So you've got a lens flare going on, pretty old school, but I like it. Got a little bit of these beams coming out. Then those beams seem to kind of crumple and turn to this globular brush stroking that he likes to do. Then the colors invert while the globular lines change. Now we're back. Now we're back to the environment. You can see everything, and the beams come back. And the beams kind of stay there suspended. Sorry that it's so pixelated, by the way. This is, I couldn't get a very high quality version of the Gengar. The beams stay there, but you're kind of seeing this one starts to occupy more of the frame, which makes it feel like it's coming out at you. If something's doing this, right, and the perspective is following that vanishing point, this is really coming out very close to you. So it's very proximate angle for this beam. So we've got the use of depth on the explosion as well. It's not a flat spark, it's not flat beams. You can clearly see the depth involved there. Then that kind of sweeps over, and that's that. That's just one little impact. That lasts for about 1 second. So all of those drawings packed in, he really builds a lot of detail, and you can see that there's a lot going on there. It's very, very flashy, but we got to see it one step at a time if you want to learn how to recreate it yourself. You know, there's a difference between being an audience member and being a creator. If you're an audience member, you can just allow yourself to be bamboozled by the whole thing, be knocked over backwards. But if you want to learn from it and create scenes like this yourself, you got to start recognizing the different elements and how they come together to create an experience. And that's why Gengar is really fun to look at, because in the Gengar artwork, you can see everything very clearly differentiated by color coding. So that's the first example I want to show you. But he's not a one-trick pony. He's good at effects animation, you can see that, but he's also pretty good at character animation, and he's also good at lighting. He does some creative things with the lighting, and this shot, I really, really liked this shot. You know, I was looking through his showreel, and he's got a lot of very intense shots, and it's kind of hard to look at all of them in a reel. It's a bit too much for me, I've got to admit. But that's just what Toei does, you know, with One Piece. These scenes are very climactic, and they're supposed to be overwhelming. I understand that. But this character shot is really cool, I think. Let's have a look at it. So I don't really need to explain a lot with this. You can see it because it's very clear with this high contrast lighting. And I love how the character steps into this lighting, or maybe not steps, but moves into this lighting. So we can see this progressively. You just got the eyebrows so far. And because of the high contrast, you really see this. This is pretty much white here. This is like ultramarine, and this is a very dark navy blue. But also the light takes on the shapes of the scales. That's very considerate, I think. It's not just getting the average surface and then having the texture slapped on top. No, you can see that the light is actually following these scales, and that makes a big difference in this shot, I think. Now the eyebrows are covered, now the tip of the nose is now protruding, and now on the cheeks it's just the tips of the scales that are protruding. Now this kind of lighting, it really adds to the shot, but I think it requires a very good understanding of the depth and the 3D volumetric view of the face. And this is before even he's done his signature eye bulge. Now we've got the bridge of the nose is fully in, and you got that crazy expression on the face. And I just love this. I think this looks really good. This shot really stood out to me. You got the fog mist just going forward in the foreground. That was probably done by the artworking department. A little bit of a tilt at this part, so you can see the face isn't just straight forward, upright the whole time. There's a little bit of a tilt and then it corrects itself. Nice. Working in a little bit more detail into the movement in the posing. Very nice. Here's another hallmark of Vincent Chansard that he's shown off on One Piece quite a lot. In this piece, we can see that he has this very full command of 3 dimensions. And this is a really nice kind of swinging shot. It's an arcing shot, actually, if we're talking technically in camera movement terms. I believe it's an arcing shot. And it starts out with these glowing petals. Oh my God, this is really intense to look at, okay? But it doesn't last. It just kind of disintegrates into a bunch of petals. Very nice shapes. We've got this shape consistency with these petals. It's kind of like almost like lily pads or something. It's like this kind of shape a lot. And they're moving this way, right? So is his arm. His arm is closer to us, so the arm is moving this way. But the rear arm, or the horn here, the little horn further away, that's moving that way. And that's the idea. You have a kind of central point to an arc, maybe it's the head in this case, and the camera's arcing around that. And that means that anything that's in front of the pivot point is going to be moving this way, and anything behind the pivot point is going to be moving that way. Pretty simple, actually. Really nice, it works very well. Now he's got that electric flare just really coming out at us. This negative electric line is very much hand brushed. It looks like a one take, a single take, you can do this kind of crazy line. And I think that works well for a scene that's meant to be high energy. Is just have that raw brushstroke put down. You can artwork it later with the glows and things. Okay, so I like that one. He's got a few that kind of follow that arcing thing. I think it's a staple of his. This is a shot that I saw on his showreel that just really impressed me. I just really like this effects animation shot, so I thought I'd show it here. We've got this spiral effect, right? We've got a lot of stuff going on around it, but the thing we're looking at is this, because it's a higher contrast element in the scene, but this stuff also supports it. It's kind of spiraling like this around. That supports what we're seeing here. This is kind of this twister-like thing, right? So we've got a lot of this kind of movement going on that's wrapped around, and we can assume that this stuff is twisting like that. And it's creating these little circles. And let's have a look at it. So I'm gonna play it for you. Interesting. So there's a lot of this kind of twist energy, but that energy gets converted into forward energy at a certain point. It kind of gets stretched out. All of this twisting, that energy starts to just go in a beam. So it's very powerful, I suppose. Look at that. At a certain point, all of this rotation just starts going this way. And it shoots forwards. And then we got a completely ruled straight line at this point. And then as the cherry on top, we have this lovely symmetrical, almost symmetrical. You don't want it completely symmetrical. That would look a bit uncanny. But we have these 3 ringlets that emanate outwards from this beam. And also we have a little bit of movement this way. These halos are tracking this way just slightly because I think camera movement is going this way. So we're just kind of almost following a little bit, but we couldn't keep up with that very fast beam. So yeah, I really like that shot. Let me just show it fully. Really cool piece of effects animation. I like that a lot. Very inspiring. Again, here's a little bit of where he shows his character animation chops. Very, very ultra close up just of the mouth. Now, I think on a low budget anime, what you might find is there's just, the mouth is closed and then the mouth just moves its way open to this. But look at the way it goes from A to B. If this is A and the final pose is B, it just creeps its way open and it goes first down with that side. And the right side is dragging along, and it creates this sneer, this slimy sneer, just that little pose in between. That's very good. That's very good. And for a character like this, that's very important. Now, I'll continue this shot and show you where it goes from here. Fingers come into view, and then this is another signature of Vincent Chansard. It is partly the Toei animation thing. I've seen it before in Toei productions, but I'll give him credit for this as well. This is what I call the Chansard eye pop. Did you see it? I'll play it fully so you can see it. This is something he likes to do. It's a little bit of a signature, I would say. It's an eye pop. So you see the eyes are thin, and then it just boom, it just bursts open. And look at the size. This is the pupil here. This is the pupil of the eye. There's a big shine to it, like a big cross glow thing with lots of flare. We only have the eye in the shot here. And then finally it comes back down to a regular eye-bulging size before we start pulling away. I'll show you it again in a different shot that he's done. Here's another Chansard eye pop. Did you see it? So we start with, the forehead in this one, moving up, and then bang. You see the difference here? That's the size of them in this frame, from this size in one frame, and then the next frame, they're about twice the size. And then they come back down to that. So that was just one frame, that lasted one frame. But when you play it through, it does add something very energetic to the movement, having that pop of the eyes, and then pulling back. And this is pretty cool as well, with the kind of Itano circus style thing around this point. It's pretty cool. This shot here, I just wanted to throw this in because, again, it gives you an idea for his versatility. If this is indeed him, maybe this wasn't even made by him. I don't know. But I thought it was really cool. It's just a character putting on this long leather boot. And look at the texture here. This really, really nice. So we can see the foot is like here in the ankle. That's the tip of the toe there. And these just look so lifelike. Like when I saw this, I was like, oh my God, that kind of leather texture is really well observed. The lighting stretching its way from where it's being pulled here, all the way down to the base. You can see that foot moving through the boot to occupy more of the boot. See the limp toe and heel of the boot here starts to be pulled up, and then it starts to take shape. Yeah, I just think that's really impressive, really well observed piece of animation. Join me in part 2 where I compare side by side the Genga to the final artworked anime you'll see on television, as well as an example of where this artworking stage does not go to plan. Oh no, what are you doing? See you in the next video. If you want to make animations of your own, Mastering Motion is an advanced online animation course designed to train you in techniques that go far beyond the principles of 2D animation. Advanced techniques like 3D hand-drawn camera movement, fight choreography, effects animation, character animation, as well as my reference process. If that sounds a bit too advanced for you, if you're a beginner, then I've got you covered as well with my Getting Started in 2D Animation course. This one lays the foundations of everything you need to make your own animated films. That includes drawing principles, animation principles, storyboarding principles, and the rendering process. And this is all in one place. No need to hunt down obscure videos in distant corners of the internet. We build you up with animation exercises that grow in complexity as you learn more. It's a course that will help you to develop the ability to fully realize on the screen whatever crazy ideas are going on in your head. Go to animatorguild.com to learn more about these. The link is in the description and pinned in the top comment of this video. Subscribe to the channel, leave a comment if you like, and I'll see you in the next one. Goodbye.